Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures, Daily Dose of Nature. I'm your host, Sunny Vanderstar. Today's topic is Know Before You Go, Maine Coastal Explorer. And it will be presented by our fabulous NatHab Expedition Leader, Kaden Dearing. Kaden, thank you so much for being here today and for taking us away with you to Maine for the next hour. Let's go ahead and dive in.
So happy to be here. Thank you, Sunny. All right, I'm gonna get my webcam sharing going here. Let's see if I can find my presentation again. All right. Just a little bit about myself. My name, as Sunny said, my name is Kaden Dearing. I have been an expedition leader with Natural Habitat Adventures for close to 2 years now. I have been in the guiding biz for a little bit longer than that. I started guiding when I was just a teenager up in the greater Yellowstone ecosystem in Grand Teton National Park area, where I was guiding backcountry hiking tours and backpacking tours through that area. Nowadays, of course, I work for Natural Habitat, guide I also guide up in Glacier National Park. I guide in our canyons tour of the American Southwest, and I also guide in Yellowstone in the winter. A little bit of background in the area. I have deep to the coast of Maine, Portland area. The Dearings have long been in that area. There's actually a high school named after the Dearing family. So excited to be back. I love the area, and this is the greatest time. As Sunny said, this is the Know Coastal Explorer presentation. Just a couple of housekeeping items to begin with. We wanted to update you all on our ongoing COVID protocols. Nowadays, of course, we will be monitoring local spikes and guidelines that are needed, and we will mask accordingly or not. Some updated protocols from last year and years previous. We will no longer be testing on day one. If we will have tests available, if need be, or if you would like one, you may request from your expedition leader. And of course, we will be testing, providing those if guests show signs or symptoms, in order to kind of have a better handle on the situation and know what to do going forward. If we need to, of course, move you away from other guests or even off the trip, that will be based off of our testing. Of course, I should add, last year, my season was cut short personally up in Maine because I had contracted COVID. And during the traveling to personal note, I would suggest that you mask up while traveling in close proximity with high numbers of crowds. Of course, this is not required, but just more anecdotal. I will be, of course. I do not want to be missing any part of this amazing season we have planned for you all this upcoming fall.
Hey, Kaden.
Moving on. Yes.
Can you hear me? You're cutting out a little bit. I'm wondering if we should just go ahead and turn your webcam off to put all the emphasis on the presentation. Is that cool?
Sure.
Thank you. That sounds better already.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you for letting me know. Perfect. So continuing on, sorry about that. I wanted to share a brief quote from Henry David Thoreau, his wonderful book, The Maine Woods. I'm going to kind of set our stage here. The spruce and the cedar on its shores, hung with gray lichens, looked at a distance like the ghosts of trees. Ducks were sailing here and there on its surface, and a solitary loon, like a more living wave, a vital spot on the lake's surface, laughed and frolicked and showed its straight leg for our amusement. These are some of the highlights. You know, he talks about, of course, the trees, the lichens, the waterfowl, and many birds that we will be seeing up here along the coast, and this beautiful, I love this imagery of ghosts of trees and lichen that'll be growing life upon life here on our coastal Maine tour. Kind of set the stage. Here's a beautiful map of the state of Maine. Of course, we will be traveling in our travels here along the southern central coast there. Of course, I've placed a star there in Bangor, which is our starting and ending location where you all will be flying into and out of from various parts of the world. Here is a more a closer map of kind of this central southern coast region I'm talking about. Down here in the Penobscot Bay area and Acadia National Park. Of course, we will be traveling down from Bangor and spending some time down in here in these towns of Rockland and Camden. You can see here on the left, or we'll be from Deer Isle, which is a nice, a little bit more isolated forested area with the town of Stonington and old lobster town there. Where we'll be taking a ferry that I will talk about a little bit later down to Idaho there as well. And then the last couple of days, of course, we will be spending down on Mount Desert Island and the great Acadia National Park with a couple of days there in Bar Harbor. Of course, as you can see, there is a little bit of traveling distance, I should note, between some of these towns, and we will be traveling through in a passenger vehicle, but of course make several meaningful stops and wonderful things along the way. I will not be going over the the nitty-gritty of the itinerary today, but just some wonderful highlights I wanted to point out. Of course, as I mentioned, we'll be traveling into and out of the town of Bangor. At one point in time, the logging of the world, as you can see, beach here on the side of right to the Penobscot River down there. A beautiful, beautiful town that will just a brief time in our. Of course, the fall is going to be peak throughout. Of course, late September and early October, the season that we have going for you all. There's going to be some beautiful photography opportunities. Of course, pinks, oranges, yellows, stunning, beautiful time to be traveling through the coast of Maine. This is a picture of the inland of Mount Desert Island out in Acadia National Park and a small pond there. Really stunning. Of course, we'll have some really great opportunities as far as wildlife goes to see some coastal birds. Here we have on the upper right-hand corner a northern gannet, one of the largest coastal birds in North America. In the center, we have a great cormorant, a large fishing bird that I think is quite charismatic with the large tufts on the head, and they can be quite intimidating. And then, of course, we have the Atlantic puffin, which has an interesting story on the coast of Maine. Was reintroduced several days ago to the various islands after it had been hunted out for women's hats in the 18th century, but has made a great rebounding effort in the area, and hopefully we'll be able to see those cute little, very iconic, again, birds in our travels. A couple of highlights, of course, we have opportunities to see some lighthouses. Maine, of course, this is at Owl's Head State Park, which is right outside of Rockland. We'll do a short walk up there and talk about the history of course, fishing, lobster boats, and the economy of the region. Really beautiful, nice viewpoints out along the coast there. These nice lighthouses. Um, Further along with our human history area, of course, we'll be traveling to one of my favorite locations, which is the Sail, Power, and Steam Museum. The curator of the museum, Jim, he's a fantastic man. He's been doing this for many, many years, and he'll walk us through there and talk about, again, the history of the various sailing and coastal economy of the area, the evolution of the ships that have been traveling through, of course, talk about the use of eastern white pine for the British government in the earliest times for ship masts, all the way up to, of course, motorboats and the ongoing challenges of fisheries in the area. This is a beautiful picture of Camden, another small town we will be traveling to. We'll actually be staying at a small inn there along in the bay. But this is the Penobscot Bay region, which is really the majority of the area we'll be traveling through is around, of course, the Penobscot Bay. Really stunning. Of course, this is, as Henry David Thoreau says in another part of his book, The Maine Woods, this is where the hills and forests meet the ocean. And then you can see that hard line, of course, this thick life upon life region all the way up to the coast. Absolutely stunning. As I mentioned, this is the Deer Isle Bridge that is headed out to Deer Island. Not a lot of people out here, pretty isolated, except for, of course, the town of Stonington. Out here, we'll be doing a couple of hikes through the woods there along the coast to be able to see, of course, better views of the foliage. And there's usually several beautiful sailboats sailing up and down this bay region area here. So Deer Island, one of my favorites. We'll be staying out at a small location called Pilgrim's Inn, which I will show a picture of here in a few. Definitely a highlight of our tour out here. And of course, we'll be finishing our tour out at Bar Harbor. Here's a beautiful photo of Acadia National Park and Bar Harbor. One of the more elevation, I should say, gaining areas of the region. You can see the large hills in the background. We'll be doing a few walks, some hills up in that area. Of course, we'll be walking up Cadillac Mountain, another wonderful highlight of our end of our tour here. We'll be doing a sunrise activity at Cadillac Mountain, which in the winter is the first place that the sun rises in the US. Wonderful place. Of course, beautiful photo, not mine, borrowed, but a wonderful opportunity. It should be a little chilly, but hopefully we'll get a view pretty similar to this photo. And here I wanted to share just a brief video that shows that a national park photographer has put out of some time lapses, some beautiful landscape scenery in Acadia. I'll just let you all view this for a brief minute here, if it will load. Nice. Really, really stunning shots there of they exited out of my. Oop. Give me just 1 second here. Oh, moving on. Full screen. There we go. All right, back on track. All right, yeah, there's just some beautiful views of Acadia. As I said, really stunning. Of course, we're going to get some really lovely mornings with the sunlight, some beautiful lighting for photography along the coast there. And something I did fail to mention, one of my favorite aspects of this tour is the wildlife that we get to view in the various tide pools along the coast. Of course, there's all sorts of seaweed and growing along there, as well as mussels and things like that. Of course, we'll talk about that with your various guides throughout the tour to get a kind of a micro look at things that we maybe overlook sometimes at these small ecosystems that are living in these spaces that we don't get to travel to very often. So another thing that I'm quite excited for. But moving on from our itinerary overview, I kind of wanted to get a little bit more into kind of the nitty-gritty of our tour and those things that you can prepare for now in the weeks approach your departure. Of course, we'll kind of our climate and weather, packing tips, equipment, arrivals and departures. Paul, I was editing this presentation at the St. George and Flagstaff Arizona, but the Bangor Airport. I didn't fill that out, but apparently not. Of course, we'll be talking kind of about money in the pre-departure briefing, our various transport accommodations and ethics in the wilderness. So elevation and hiking. This expedition is actually rated easy for physical requirements amongst natural habitat adventure tours, traveling roughly around sea level to about 1,600 feet in elevation, which is the top of Cadillac Mountain. So for those who are living at sea level, we shouldn't have too many elevation problems. And of course, those who are coming from the air will be thick, you can chew on it. So no worries about that. Guess I should be able to hike for about 10 miles, a slight incline. As I mentioned, Cadillac Mountain is one of our wonderful hikes that you will not want to miss. So get those uphill practice miles in these coming weeks. That and a couple of according to your specific expedition. And these will, of course, be along uneven terrain, protruding rock out to the Owl's Head lighthouse is kind of topple. Walk can be difficult, folks. So that's you'll be stepping over. And not, we'll have plenty of opportunity to be walking along paved pathways. There will be that will not be so easy. Of course, this time of year, it's going to be a little bit damp and chilly. We're going to have some cold and windy mornings, especially up at Cadillac Mountain. The sunrise is going to be a little bit later, in the year. I haven't looked at that time yet. Chilly. And those 3 boat rides we will be going on out along the coast as well. You want to keep in mind for those layers that we're packing and those windbreakers and things to stay comfortable while we're out viewing the sights. This time of year, mid-September through mid-October, of course, it's going to be a little bit warmer in the start of September, about mid-60s as a high, and then down to the upper 20s a little bit more into October, and later in the season, it'll start to get to the upper 50s during the daytime, and then the low 40s at night. So those we'll want to pack all those things important to keep in mind. Of course, lots of rain, and especially when you forget to pack your raincoat that day. That is when it will rain, I promise you. These are some of the vehicles we will be traveling in. We have a 15-passenger van down there on the bottom right. It might not be that exact model of Ford E350, but we will be traveling a van there. Important to note because we will be using rental vehicles that space might be limited, so it's important to keep to luggage guidelines, especially on this tour, which I will go over in a couple of slides. Of course, we'll be traveling on one of my favorite parts is on the upper right hand. That is a traditional schooner, not the one that we will be traveling on, but very similar. The schooner Surprise that we will be traveling out of Camden out along the coast for some birding. We'll have a chance to actually be with an ornithologist out there on that boat, which is a really great opportunity. On the top left, we have a traditional lobster boat that we'll be traveling out with as well. And then on the bottom left, that actually is the ferry that travels out to Idaho. So that will be Otter. Wonderful little boat. Might be a little cramped, but beautiful views. Let's talk about packing a little bit. We're going to talk about layers, layers, layers. And that means a sweat wicking base layer, maybe a long sleeve. I like to wear what's called a sun hoodie, breathable sweat wicking material using a hoodie, which is great for a base layer and also great for sun protecting skin. Of course, if it gets a little more chilly, you want a lightweight fleece. Fleece is great even when it's wet. It will keep you warm. And so a nice fleece, a Patagonia or Columbia fleece is a great idea. Of course, a rain shell, as I mentioned, the day that you do not pack that in your bag is the day that it will rain for 5 hours straight, in my experience. So that rain shell is something that I always recommend everyone live at the bottom of their day pack, and they'll never be without. Just leave it there until you need it. Of course, a nice wide brim hat is something that I would recommend. My old Boy Scout leader would always say that we needed to protect our ears and our necks to wear a wide brim hat like the old forest rangers and park rangers. So I'll be wearing one, and I would recommend you as well. Of course, sunglasses, if you like, Chums is small elastics that attach to the back of your sunglasses that keep them on your head and keep them from flying off. Those are a great idea. Oops. As it can be quite windy, especially on those boat rides. Lightweight, breathable pants. Of course, some light colors. We don't want to be getting too warm. You know, you could probably go with darker colors as well. Not too much of a problem, but some lightweight boots or hiking shoes. You'd probably be okay without large boots unless you really love that ankle support, but make sure you break them in. Nothing is worse than a brand new pair of boots for blisters and all sorts of things like that. I should add motion sickness medication is something that I would recommend as well if that is something you are prone to. Of course, the roads are quite nice, and that shouldn't be a problem as we are traveling around in our vehicles. But as we're out along the coast, and if you tend to get seasick, then that is something that you'll definitely want to keep in mind to enjoy those boat rides rather than engaged in other activities overboard. And I should add as well, permethrin and ticks. As I mentioned, my season last year was cut rather short due to contracting COVID. But for the short amount of time I did spend in Maine, I did bring back a little friend on one of my legs that I had to remove. And so ticks are a kind of a common occurrence up where we will be traveling. And so I would recommend washing your clothes, especially your pants. Wearing especially pants rather than shorts is a great idea. Of course, long wool socks is also great, but washing them through a cycle of the laundry with permethrin, which is a chemical kind of like DEET, but it's mostly for clothing to keep ticks and mosquitoes off of you. highly recommended to prevent those buddies from hitching a ride. Let's talk about luggage a little bit. Of course, we have our day pack and our checked bag. On our day pack, which it could be a small backpack. Of course, we'll want some sunscreen, maybe water bottle, our camera equipment, maybe an extra pair of socks in case they get wet. Of course, our layers. We'll want our rain shell / windbreaker there. I would just place it at the bottom of your pack and have it live there for the entirety from when you leave your house until you return. And then, of course, your fleece layer. Of course, we will have some nice, lots of room in the hopefully for your day packs. And so those layers that you want to have on in the morning with you and then take off as the day gets warmer later in the afternoon, you should have room for those in the van and your day pack. Of course, you'll want your checked bag, which is one piece of soft-sided luggage. As I mentioned, our vehicles might be a little bit limited, but our luggage will be traveling with us in those vehicles. So it is very important that you bring along one piece of soft-sided luggage in order that we might be able to Tetris those items in along with ourselves and the rest of our things going with us. In your checked bag on a day-to-day basis, you will have everything that you will need, not during the day. All those things, medications, as I said, extra socks, water bottle, all those things you need throughout the day will live in your day pack, and all those things that you will not need until pulling into the hotel in the evening will live in your check bag. Of course, you will have received Natural Habitat Adventure luggage tags before your tour, or if you've traveled with us before, then you probably still have them. If you do not have one of these items, we will have extras when you arrive day one, and that is vitally important as we're moving from hotel to hotel, that you have all of your items marked with these luggage tags so that we can keep track of them, ensure that they get to our next destination. Of course, traveling with us in our vehicles, we will have hiking poles, binoculars, and wildlife viewing scopes. And so if you would like to leave your hiking poles at home, you are welcome to do so. Of course, if you have a favorite pair that you would really love to use, you're more than welcome to. But rather place the strain and wear and tear on our poles, we're more than happy to provide. Of course, in the vans as well, we'll be providing a water cooler to refill water bottles throughout the day, as well as various granola bars and various snacks that you would like to munch on as we go about our day. Let's talk about arrivals and departures. So as I mentioned, most of you all will be arriving through the Bangor Airport. And it is a small airport with just a few accommodations, important to note. Rather, I think there's a small cafe, but some limited food options in there. But it is only just a 10-minute drive from there to the hotel, which is the Residence Inn run by Marriott there in Bangor. And if you are arriving on day one, we ask that you arrive before 4 p.m. As our welcome dinner reservation and presentation will begin at 5:30 for most departures, though it might be beginning at 6 for some as well. So we ask that you arrive before 4. But those guests who are arriving on day one and who have arranged and shared their travel information with our office, close to the baggage claim with the little sign, of course, up. With all the logos that you can see from afar. And so you'll be able to see our expedition leaders there. They will pick you up, which is important to know as you're traveling. Slight changes that try to update those with the office as you go along, because our expedition leaders will not receive these updates unless they're communicated through the office the appropriate channels. So make sure you are communicating that as they progress. Of course, those guests who are arranging for their own travel, whether they're driving or arriving for day one, will be responsible for their own travel to the hotel. As far as departure goes, most of our guests will depart from Bangor Airport, which is about an hour and 15-minute drive from our last location, which is the Bar Harbor Inn. Of course, you will arrange departures with your expedition leader the days coming up to your departure, whether you need to leave a little bit sooner or later, and of course we can accommodate those things. But we ask that your departure not be scheduled before 11 a.m. as getting out of Bar Harbor Inn and over to the Bangor Airport can be, of course, an hour and 15-minute drive. And we need time in the morning to be able to arrange for that. Beautiful. So all costs and gratuities of the trip will be included in your tour costs. That means when we travel to the Puffin Project and we have a presenter about sharing information on the puffins, and we want to tell visitors, hotel staff, of course, restaurant staff, all these people that we will be working with throughout the tour will be compensated at the highest industry standard by your expedition leaders. However, the tips for your expedition leaders will be the one thing that is not included in your tour cost, and the guidelines for that are in your pre-departure briefing. You may reference that. Of course, money for souvenirs, books, of course you'll want to bring that along, as well as alcohol at meal times will not be included with your tour cost, excepting the first and last meals. Our accommodations, here I have some photos here on the next slide, but here is the names of the places we will be traveling to if you'd like to check into them a little bit more. Of course, the Residence Inn by Marriott in Bangor, and where we will be spending one night there. We will be traveling down to Camden to the Lord Camden Inn, which is right along the harbor there, beautiful location. We'll spend 2 nights down there. We'll be spending 2 nights at Pilgrim's Inn on Deer Isle. Really is a very special and historic bed and breakfast there on Deer Island. Is run by this amazing couple. Definitely kind of a highlight of the tour for me personally. But I think you all will very much enjoy the Pilgrim's Inn. And of course the Bar Harbor Inn, which is a very famous hotel there in Acadia National Park as well. And internet is available at all of these locations. Here's a couple of photos. On the top left, we have Pilgrim's Inn there on Deer Isle. Again, one of my favorites. Top right, there is Bar Harbor Inn there along the coast. The bottom left is, of course, the Residence Inn there in Bangor, and the bottom right is the Lord Camden Inn down there in downtown Camden. That is the street-facing view. There's a bay-facing view as well. Really some amazing places that we will be staying. Let's talk about food. So all dietary restrictions can be accommodated. We'll be traveling to these areas that are very used to these restaurants and places that we will be eating at are very used to accommodating people with various dietary restrictions. Just make sure those are communicated to the office in your medical information that you're communicated beforehand so that your field staff will know. Of course, the field staff, if this has been communicated, the office will have this information on them and they reference it. It is always a good idea in the case of severe allergy. My uncle has a deathly shellfish allergy, which would be rather relevant to this area, to confirm with field staff at the beginning of the trip, and to confirm if you feel so inclined with the restaurant staff at each of the places we will be traveling to. It is important to note as we move through and have some really wonderful food options planned throughout the trip that certain restaurants and lodges are still experiencing some understaffing due to kind of some epidemic leftovers. And so we ask that you just be patient as they might be just a little bit slower. But the majority, I would say, are rebounded rather quickly, rather well. So hopefully that will not be an issue. Of course, we'll group travel is a little bit of travel. You know, you're not traveling with your family. You're not traveling in small groups as a couple or things like that. And so first, we want to make sure that we follow leave no trace principles as we're moving through the landscape. Of course, we're going to plan and prepare where we're going. We're going to be traveling on impacted surfaces, walking mostly along the beaten down trails of the various areas we'll be traveling through, and not stepping on the fragile coastal ecosystems of these mosses and beautiful fungus that are growing along there to disturb those things that people would love to see after the fact that we've traveled. Of course, we're going to leave what we find. We're not going to be collecting specimens as they would back in the 1800s for our own personal collections. We're going to be respecting the wildlife that we see, and we're going to be courteous to other visitors. Of course, all of these go without saying for the seasoned traveler, which many of you are. Smoking, for those of you who are smokers, we ask that you step away when you do smoke from the group, that you, of course, follow guidelines when it comes to our accommodations and where the designated smoking areas are. If you are a smoker, please communicate that with our expedition leaders rather early on in the trip, and they will be able to accommodate you and find places for you to do that. We also ask that you limit phone when traveling through the van. As I mentioned, we'll be together in our 15-passenger vans for a lot of the tour. And we ask that, the loud phone conversations that we might be having, around business or whatever, can be rather distracting when we're all traveling through the landscape. And of course, your expedition leader is providing commentary, and we're trying to enjoy the nature that we're traveling through. And so if you do have kind of important phone calls, which many of us do nowadays, working remotely or this or that or the other, that you kind of maybe talk to your expedition leader beforehand and figure out a time and location that would be best for that. We also ask that we avoid kind of touchy conversational topics, politics, religion, things like that. Of course, we're traveling through, like I said, beautiful landscapes with people that we might have never met before, a couple of days before. And we come from various different backgrounds, experiences, but we all come together for one purpose, and that's the love of nature and natural landscapes, of wildlife. And we want to be focusing on these things and not get caught up in the nitty-gritty of political views or controversial topics. And that, again, closing with our beautiful sunrise view from Cadillac Mountain, which I am looking so much forward to, is my presentation. Thank you all for joining us. And that's me.
Kaden, thank you so much. Before we start the Q&A, I just want to remind everyone that they can submit their questions via the questions field in the control panel. But we've got some great questions to start with. Do guests need to bring binoculars as stated in the pre-departure booklet?
Yes, actually, I apologize. That was again a holdover from a previous presentation, but yes, we do ask that you bring binoculars on this particular.
Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying. What time of year are the Atlantic? Thank you for that
question. I appreciate it.
Sure. What time of year are the Atlantic puffins seen?
Get that clarification.
Did you hear my last question?
The puffins, no, I did not, sorry.
No, I think you did, the puffins. What time of year are the Atlantic puffins seen?
Yeah, they live along the coast there throughout the late fall, and so there is a pretty good chance that we'll be able to see them. It depends on the island. They travel throughout the it more depends on location, I would say, with this tour. This is a good time of year to be seeing them, but they can be rather fickle with traveling to different islands throughout the area.
Got it. Okay. Are there racks above the seats in the vans for day packs and coats?
Again, most likely not, though we do not have information exact. That has not been provided to us, the information of the exact models of the vans we will be traveling with, but more likely than not, the locations for storage for your day pack will either be under the seat or on the seat next to you. As most of our tours, of course, the max capacity is about 12 people, and we will be traveling in two 15-passenger vans. So there will be various seats open throughout those vans, and that's usually where we have guests place their day items.
Great. Would it be feasible to wear light colored pants in order to see if ticks have been attracted? Should you wear your pant bottoms inside your socks? So for those who are concerned with ticks, can you offer any more insight into the best clothing or how to wear your clothing?
Yeah, sticking the bottom of your pant legs into your socks is a great idea. That's usually where they're traveling up underneath, obviously, the bottom cuff of your pants. I like to wear kind of joggers that have a cinched bottom regardless, but that is a wonderful idea. You'll most likely not see them on the surface of your pants, and so I wouldn't say the color would make a large difference, but definitely tucking them into your boots or your socks, wearing cuffed bottoms or cinched bottoms. And as I mentioned, permethrin is very effective in preventing ticks.
All right, good to know. As far as the vans go, will there be one expedition leader in each van, or will the leader go back and forth or share time with each van?
Could you repeat the end of that question there, Sunny?
Sure. Our guest is wondering about where the leader, the expedition leader will be regarding the vans. Will there be two expedition leaders, one in each van, or will there just be one expedition leader and that person will share time with the vans?
That's a great question. Yeah, so all of our main departures have two expedition leaders that will be also your driver. So you will have an expedition leader with you at all times in each of the vans who will be providing commentary and being, of course, cluing you into the landscape and what's going on. So yeah, you get two, which is great.
Great. And are you likely to see the aurora in early October?
The aurora is a little bit hit or miss. Anecdotally, I would say I have known people who've seen it, and I personally have not seen it. So it's something that's actually highly. They monitor the aurora very well, and if there's good viewing nights, then we're able to kind of research into that closer to departure date, and so that'd be a good thing to bring up to your expedition leader early on to kind of look into because there are wonderful websites that kind of show where you can see the aurora or not and then plan accordingly. So hard to say now, but closer to the departure, I would look into it.
Okay, sounds good. Will it be possible to see moose during this trip?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, the moose of Maine typically hang out further inland. They're mostly hanging out in the various lakes and deep third growth forests of inland and upper Maine. I have heard of of a few sightings, but not very likely. I would say.
Okay.
Mostly coastal birds is kind of our
Sounds good. And do you know if the unseasonably hot weather is going to affect the timing for the fall colors?
That's a great question. It may delay the colors slightly. I was looking at the weather this morning for the area, and along the coast it's about mid 70s, which is mostly normal. I mean, I think it's just a couple of degrees higher than average on an average year, and so yeah, it may delay, you know, I mean, as much as a week, but I would say, you know, no more than that, if a week, maybe a couple of days, but it's looking pretty good as of right now.
That's good to hear. I think that's the last question we have time for today, so I'm going to hand it back to you for closing comments.
Beautiful. Thank you all. As I mentioned, you know, it's a wonderful privilege to guide for NatHab. It's a wonderful privilege to guide along the coast of Maine to see the various changes. We will be, you know, experiencing, you know, and seeing those changes of the woods, and we'll be talking about kind of how climate change has affected those areas, as kind of mentioned in those questions there. And these are important things to consider. But this is really a beautiful tour, very low impact, and it's going to be very scenic and lovely this time of year. So I'm very excited for you all to be traveling with us this year. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks again, Kaden, for taking the time to present for us today. I also want to thank everybody who tuned in. Please join us again tomorrow for our next Daily Dose of Nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I'll conclude the webinar. Have a wonderful day, everyone.